Welcome to the Dr. Pat Show. Talk radio to thrive by. Powerful, inspiring, and coming to you live, bringing you stories of people like you and me, busting through and living life full out. Get ready to dare to wonder what your life would be like if you knew you could not fail.
Welcome and happy holidays, everyone. My name is Ellen Stewart, and I am the Pushy Broad from the Bronx. I am subbing for Dr. Pat today, and I wish her the happiest of holidays and the best of New Year's. And this is my show, Recovery Recharged. I am thrilled today to talk to you about a wonderful guy who's going to be with us for the hour. His name is Edwin McCain. He is the illustrious singer-songwriter of I'll Be, and I could not ask for more. And he's going to talk pretty candidly with the Pushy Broad about his struggle to recovery and his 20-plus year music career. I want you to know that our Bible up in the Bronx is the New York Times, and the New York Times has called him the great American romantic because of the songs that he's written for weddings over the years. And I see he's scoffing at what I'm saying, but he's a great guy, and I know we have a lot of things in common, and I want to be able to welcome him to you today and have an honest conversation at Recovery Recharged. So the Pushy Broad is really thrilled to welcome Edwin McCain. How you doing, man?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. Happy Christmas, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. How was your Christmas?
It was like we kept it just to my immediate family, my wife, and my kids, and I grew up the child of a pediatrician, so we're acutely aware of viral spread. So we were trying to keep it to a dull roar and stay out of the mix as much as possible, and mostly just out of respect and care for our frontline workers. You know, my primary motive for following the strictest of guidelines is just to try to protect them. And my father's also 86, so we've been staying away from him as well. And yeah, it was good. It was a good. I mean, I'm sure a lot of people will not admit this, but you know, there's a whole lot less family drama. You know?
Yeah. The relatives that you're supposed to really want to see, but don't really want to see. I get
that you don't ever see except for once a year. I mean, yeah.
And then you talk about them the whole rest of the year.
Not really. That's even kind of a point too I've made to my wife. I'm like, you know, it's interesting. We force ourselves to be around people that we don't ever see or talk about any other time. You know, you know, if you weren't related to them, and I have a unique perspective because I'm adopted. So, you know, family gatherings for me and my adopted son are a different sort of dynamic, because I can teach him how to be thankful and grateful that he shares no genetic material with these idiots. And we just share that moment together, and it's great. It's a great thing.
Well, I'm really glad it was peaceful for you, and I'm also glad that you're cognizant of what's going on, and certainly with the first responders and wearing a mask and all of those things, because in some places around this country, people are not that conscious of it and not that cognizant of taking heed. So I'm glad that your family is.
Well, I've been, you know, like a lot of people, I think I've found myself just befuddled at how we've landed at this binary moment, and how we've just separated into oil and water, and these two polarized opposites. And I keep thinking, well, how did this happen? Because I have my best friend is a polar opposite of me politically, right? 100% polar opposite of me politically, but we're devoted to each other. It doesn't affect our friendship at all. You know, we just don't talk about that. And I just wonder, I'm like, how can it be that we have this much in common, except for he politically believes something so diametrically opposed to my foundational principles. Like how have we gotten here? And so my best guess is, after reading Sapiens and reading a book by Robert Sapolsky called Behave, my best guess is that somewhere, 70,000 years ago, when we were in our little tribes and struggling to survive, there were two people in the tribe that were the most important people. And one of them was the warrior that was just crazy and single-minded and dumb enough to go out in the dark and face the snakes and spiders and all the stuff that were going to eat them and figure out a way to kill something and bring it back for us to eat. And then the other person that was really important was the shaman, who sat there and created a sense of community and told the origin stories and found the little herbs in the forest that healed people and was inclusive and empathetic. And those two people are our ancestors.
And which one do you identify with?
I'm an empath. I mean, I'm probably, but again, I'm a weird hybrid of those two things. I'm an avid bow hunter, and I occupy my space as an apex predator, but I'm a bleeding heart liberal. Like I feel like people need help even if they don't deserve it. Even if you're not going to be thanked for it. And I've been operating under that mantra forever. I realize that there are people that need help, and it doesn't matter why.
And that also makes you a good restorer, right? You can find broken things and make them new.
Yeah, and I'm a habitual restorer of old things and all of those things. And I'm a lot like Costanza, because I sure hope the waitress likes me. You know what I mean? Because God help us. Everybody that I come in contact with has to like me, or I'm just not going to sleep tonight. I used to be more like that. As I get older, and after treatment, I realized that that's not necessarily an achievable goal.
Well, I understand what you mean, because I have the same things too. And I have family members that are also diametrically opposed to what I'm saying. And I'm thinking the same thing until Rachel Maddow on MSNBC said one night, the difference here is that we're on Earth 1 and they are simply on Earth 2. Right. So that's how I can reconcile that in many, many ways. But I think in many instances, and as I was reading a little bit more about you and learning a little bit about what we want to talk about today from my own point of view, that you and I have more things in common than I thought. Which is really something, because I am the Pushy Broad from the Bronx, and I have only been to one place in South Carolina, and that's Fort Mill. And I understand that many people in Fort Mill really think they're from Charlotte, so they're not exactly in Fort Mill. But that is the only place. But have you ever been up here? Have you been up in New York? Have you played gigs up here?
Yeah, so I've been playing in the Northeast for my whole career. And for some reason, Long Island and Manhattan and we've just done really well up there. And I say this a lot. I mean, and New England, like Boston area has been crazy for us, like really great for us. And what I came to understand is that there is a culture of get it done that we share. Right. So there's a lot of people down here. The attitude is the same. Here's a problem. Well, it just got to be fixed. And there's a lot of people that share that sort of mentality. It's just the accent's different. Y'all talk funny.
I spent a lot of time working for a treatment center, as you know, in Nashville, Tennessee, and I learned so many different expressions in the South. I also learned that bless her heart wasn't
Yeah,
exactly a
that's not,
compliment for the
no,
pushy broad from the Bronx.
no. Somebody down here says, bless your heart. That's just, you just caught the middle finger. That was not,
Yeah.
it's not your,
So
I
I
actually
understand
I
that.
actually had a realtor do that to my face here in Greenville. And I was like, I'm from here, right? I was like, you're like, that's not, she goes, bless your heart. And I was like, what? Really?
Unbelievable. The other thing we have in common is that I had mentioned to you before that we came here together because we have a mutual friend. So I just want to shout out to David Blackwell, for putting us together today, because he's a great guy and we've done some great work together in recovery. And I also told you that I used to be married to a musician, so I understand that whole cycle of things, and that's kind of where I fell. Okay, in early recovery back in the '60s and '70s, and I know that when you get into treatment, they talk to you about a timeline of events and where you were and how it was for you. So I was wondering if you wouldn't mind talking a little bit about your teenage years and how things were for you and when you got started.
Yeah. So I was actually, I review this, unfortunately, I review this a lot because I have a 15-year-old and a 14-year-old. And so you know, my middle son, who we were affectionately refer to as Dr. Evil, uh, exhibits, it's literally like watching a replay of my teenage years, because he has the same sort of oppositional defiance that I had, and that's that it's hard to criticize someone who you encoded half the program. I mean, it's like Ford, coming out and criticizing one of their latest vehicles. I made half of this and it sucks. And but here's the thing: is that it's offering me like this strange opportunity to go back and try to talk to my 15-year-old self or my 14-year-old self and say, look, they didn't understand any of this stuff when I was your age. And now what you have to be aware of is really a matter of making him aware of patterns. Right. And so my path into addiction is tangled up in dyslexia and ADD. And so I just had a really hard time in school. And so I just, forget it. And he hates it too. And it's not, and what I came to realize and what he's learned very quickly is that, traditional schooling doesn't matter when it comes to educating yourself. You have the entire sum total of human knowledge in your phone that you can access at any moment. And they know that, right? And their culture is now leapfrogging away from our values. And we've crammed them into these the 1800s era idea that you put kids somewhere during the day so you can harvest crops. And now they're stuck. Now, I said all that to get to, our teenage years as Gen Xers. We were unsupervised. I had a fake ID by the time I was 14. The Korean lady at the gas station used to sell us gobs and gobs of beer, and it was never a problem, right? They just
Right. They used to call us latchkey kids. Latchkey kids up north.
Latchkey kids. We just did whatever, and we figured it out on our own. Now, but we also had a culture, like we had high school fraternities. Like when I was in high school, we had a fraternity called Revelers, and you pledged it like you would a college fraternity, and it was a culture of drinking. So everybody, and Greenville, in my city in general, has a reputation for being kind of boozy, and no one thought anything of it. It was just normal. And so this is the challenge. People that are the biggest indicator for kids to have future alcohol problems is not that they drink and fall down and barf and cause problems. That they're the ones like me who drink, and I was the one that drove everybody around, and I was the one that could talk to the cops, and I was the one that had no problems at all because it metabolized differently for me. I was like, do you remember the episode of WKRP where they did the test with Johnny Fever and Venus Flytrap where they're making them drink, and Johnny Fever was just getting better? Like every drink, he just got better and better, and Venus fell off the chair and passed out. So that later on, when I went to treatment at Talbot, Dr. Beatty was quoting actually some of Dr. Anton's work that proves that when teenagers that start to drink and do and supposedly quote unquote handle their liquor, that's the biggest indicator of future alcoholism. It's just that you can handle it. And I was one of those kids. And of course, nobody knew that. Nobody knew that was part of the process. And so I just thought I was great at it. And it took decades for it to become a chronic issue for me. And I think a lot of people that are in our business discover that as well, because you can maintain a level of functionality in the music industry that would have gotten you fired 15,000 times in the regular working world. I mean, no one, like I could show up in a Viking helmet and a tutu and everybody go, oh, it's going to be a great night tonight. I mean, you get fired from your accounting job if you did that. But
well, that's par for the course. And certainly, there's a lot to be said for that. Last week, I interviewed someone who was a teaching artist and talking about the fact that she was blitzed out of her face for years and years, realizing or thinking that you were more creative in your music because of that. And then realizing, right? So how is it for you? First of all, you've given some great information to parents because now that they know what to look for their own kids. And I know you're giving your kids some of those messages. And then you said it took you a long time to realize that the I got this or I'm good at it really meant maybe I'm not so good at this. And what happened? I mean, how did it escalate to the point where we would colloquially say, I hit bottom?
Well, I had some what I thought were reasonable safeties in place. Like I said, I don't drink before shows. So I wouldn't drink during the day before shows. And I kept that rule pretty hard and fast all the way till the very end. But there's a big difference with being, chronically hungover all the time. I mean, and one of the things that happens, especially when you're a touring musician, is that every city that you go to, you establish a kind of a group of friends in that city, and they look forward to seeing you once a year, and it's their big night out. And if you're a people pleaser, you can't say no. I mean, you're going to go out with all of these people that have been waiting to see you and lavish all this object referral on you, and you get to be the center of the attention. And for needy, egocentric maniacs like us, you can't. It's just catnip. You can't say no. And so a decade will go by, and you string together a decade of big nights out, and if you haven't developed an physical alcohol dependence, then I don't know. That was the first thing that sort of occurred, and I didn't realize that I would have this every time I got off tour, I would get sick. I would get the flu and be down for weeks, and we always just sort of chalked it up to, oh well, you're going so hard that when you finally relax, your immune system gets depressed and you catch a flu. But I think now looking back on it, I was suffering from alcohol withdrawal. I just wasn't, I didn't know what that was. I just thought I had the flu, and it would occur regularly when I got off tour, and it was almost like you could set your watch to it. And now I look back on it, I was like, dude, that wasn't the flu, that was the DTs. That was just you like you went 4 days without drinking alcohol. And it just doesn't occur to you, because that's the other part of this, this journey is how susceptible your frontal cortex is, and how malleable it becomes to misinformation. And you become your own propaganda machine. That frontal cortex becomes the machine that tells you that all this aberrant behavior is okay, or somehow part of, I used to invoke the Hemingway.
Are you going to say
clause.
that? Yeah. You're going to say the Hemingway.
And I love, a lot of people say, I used to say too, I couldn't write or be creative unless I had thrown myself down a hill and had, somewhere in the picking myself up off the ground after, damaging myself emotionally, that I couldn't find something to write about. And I think about that now, and a lot of times people say, well, you wrote all this stuff under the influence. Nah, I didn't write under the influence. I wrote all that stuff in spite of all that stuff, not because of all that stuff. But
that's really important for people to get, okay? Because I know Albie and I Couldn't Ask for More came out, prior to your going into treatment. And I'm sure people think that all the time. Oh, well, now he's going to stop being creative because he's become sober. But you've made a really good point there. It's in spite of the addiction and not because of it. And that's
and the creativity thing is interesting, because I think it, and there have been a lot of studies about creativity and aging, and of course, people are much more creative in their 20s and early 30s, and that's just been a documented truth. But what I've found after the fact is that a lot of what shaped my choice and my drive to be in music was hand in hand with my desire to want to not be discovered as an alcoholic. It's hard to find a needle in a stack of needles. I gravitated towards a profession where it was accepted to behave in that way. I mean, and there's no way for anybody to say, like, I acknowledge alcoholism as a driver in my choices that landed me where I was. So in those respects, I say to people all the time, I don't look back on it in anger or disappointment in myself. I just, that's where you employ the acceptance piece in all this. It just is, it just is what happened. But coming out of the other side of it is I've discovered that I'm more than just a musician, and I've gotten involved entrepreneurially in a lot of different businesses, and I do a lot of different things other than music. So it isn't my primary focus. It is something that I love as deeply as I ever loved it, but it is not my only source of creativity. So I think what happens for a lot of people is that you come out of it and you go, oh, wow, I'm interested in a lot of things. I do, and I'm capable of doing a lot of things other than just playing my guitar every day or writing songs every day. That's just not who I am.
And that's just like saying that recovery, if we get to know it and embrace it, is much, much more than just not picking up a drink or a drug.
Yeah. And I think one of the greatest things I ever heard, and I don't remember, I used to have a bunch of speaker tapes and stuff I used to listen to. And I heard this guy say, recovery will give you a life that takes you away from recovery. Right? It will give you a life that's so rich that you have so many other things going on that you will find yourself you'll drift away from
picking up.
Yeah, well, but you drift away from the meetings and all the sort of hyper focus of walking around every day with recovery being the primary driver of every single thing you do. And I've gotten to a point where now, I'll have somebody at a party offer me a beer, and I'll turn it down, and I'll laugh because like they don't even remember. There are people that I know that don't even remember that 14 years ago I went to rehab because they didn't even notice that I was gone in the first place, right? And I think that's kind of what you're driving at with recovery. I'm always available to people in crisis. I don't walk around with the big scarlet A on my chest. I tell people, if I'm in a social setting and I bring up recovery, I'm not looking for an attaboy. I'm just reminding myself, this is not for you, because just because it's been 15 years, I've heard all those stories about, how did you relapse? Well, I made eye contact with a bartender. I made eye contact with a bartender. He gave me the man nod and I ordered a shot. I'm still on guard with it, but it's not my life now is so rich with other things. It's not my daily priority.
A while ago, when you first came back out of treatment, you wrote a great song that I really connected with a long time ago called Sobriety. And I really liked the premise of that song because it really comes across at a very different angle.
So let me clear that one up. That song is
Okay.
called Sober, and it was written by Maya Sharp.
And you wrote the lyrics?
No, she is one of my favorite. She's actually pretty much the only person I write songs with. But I heard the song, and she's not an alcoholic, right? This is a song from a non-alcoholic woman's point of view, but I called her and I was like, quit writing my life. I said, from an alcoholic, from the mouth of an alcoholic, this song takes a completely different tack, right? And this was a song because from the way she wrote it, she had showed up at a party late and everybody was drunk. And she said to her friend, you know what? Sorry, I'm a little sober for this. I'm a little sober to be here for this. And from the alcoholic's point of view, re-entry into your life becomes that moment, right? Where I'm a little too sober to stand here in this wreckage that I've caused and acknowledge it and own it. And so many marriages fail post rehab, and because we do a lot of damage. We just do a lot of and it's hard for us to own it. And it is a process, and obviously I still own my failures when I'm 14 years later, and I still have to regularly own my failures from those years. And that's just truth. But I guess in a way, it steals my resolve to stay the course. But yeah, she wrote that song and I sang it, and it became a different song. It became a different song coming from my footsteps.
Without a doubt, to everybody that's in recovery, it becomes a different song because sometimes it's kind of like an appreciation for the fact that thank God right now. I mean, that's the way I see it. That's the way it hit me. And even though on some of the sites it says, well, lyrics by Edwin McCain, I now know better, so I apologize.
No, that happens a lot. And Maya's incredibly generous in not being. She gets that we sort of find each other, and songs have a life depending on who's singing them, right? People bring their own perspective to songs, and you can go across history and hear remakes of songs where the artist brings their own experience to it and it changes it. So
So now that we're in 2020 and you have 14 years of sobriety, how has your music changed over the years? Do you think it's become more enriched, a little bit
I
more
don't.
introspective?
That's a good question. I don't know that it has as much to do with sobriety as it has to do with age. I mean, I feel like in my 20s, I wrote about these big global themes. You know, we had the idea that we could write or say something that would be uh, universally heard and make some big difference. You know, and I used to think in terms like that, like, yeah, we're going to change the world, you know, that kind of thing. That somehow we could crack the code, the magic combination of words um, would inspire people to be better or whatever I thought in my 20s. I say regularly that 50-year-old me would not be friends with 25-year-old me at all. So I'm glad that 25-year-old me got us, you know, didn't die. Um, but but our perspectives are miles apart. I think now what I try to do is find the poetry in the tiny things, you know, the little things in life that are that I think are overlooked. Why we overlook them most days, and I find, you know, I try to find that the happiness in these tiny little moments, and then somehow mine the poetry out of it, and uh, remind myself that uh, we are blessed and we are given more opportunities for happiness than sadness. It just is a choice. It becomes what are you looking at? You know, what do you choose to focus on?
Edwin, we're going to take a short break, and when we come back, maybe you will honor us with a song or two. That would be great. I'd
Oh,
appreciate
sweet. All right. Yeah. Let me plug some stuff in here.
it. All right, we'll be right back.
I'm sitting here tuning because I'm getting ready to play one of the songs that I wrote that's a little bit less about the world and more about my daughter. I wrote this for her right before she was born. And this is it goes from being these big themes to it being more about family. I'll take this slow, sweet walk with you. You let go of my hand to say I do. And he will discover just how blessed life can be. And no, 'cause all those years ago, your mom handed you to me. Every step that we take brings back the memories. Winter snows and horse shows, dancing on the beach. And I can't help thinking that I'm the lucky one. You're still my baby daughter. Now I've gained a son. I'll take this slow, sweet walk with you. You let go of my hand to say I do. Picture a slow, sweet walk yet to be. You take my hand, say, Daddy, come see, then you'll know what it feels like. You won't believe what it feels like. Then you'll know what it felt like when she handed you to me. She handed you to me.
I don't think there's any greater gift, man. That's just beautiful. Really beautiful.
Thanks. Thanks.
So you've reminded me over the years of this 1958 black and white TV show called Have Gun Will Travel. Okay, I don't know if you remember any of this, but Have Gun Will Travel is a hired gun. Okay, so you take his gun and you go all over the place. You are very much the have guitar will travel guy.
I say it all the time. Yeah, it's
300
magic
shows a year.
Yeah, it's a magic carpet for sure. I tell people all the time. This guitar has taken me to the deck of an aircraft carrier off the coast of Korea and to Djibouti, Africa, and to all over Asia and Europe, and it's crazy. I mean, it's great. But I think more than anything, and what I've told my kids is like, before you leave here, I don't care what you do, you're going to learn how to play 20 songs on acoustic guitar and be able to play them proficiently, because at the very least, you can walk into a party and make some friends. At the very least, you can make friends with people, and in a pinch, you can catch a job at a restaurant and make $100 if you need to. I mean, it's really, it was the ultimate fallback, really, for me. I mean, I joke around the first actual paying gig I got. I think I was busking out in front of this Mexican restaurant, and the manager came out and said, "Hey, can you come up here and play on the deck 2 nights a week? And I'll pay you $75 and a meal." And I dropped out of college the next day. I was like, I'm rich. I mean, couldn't believe my good fortune. And it's true. If you can play a little bit, you can find a gig.
I've got to ask you one question about this, because I haven't found it in anything online, but you never know. Okay. Can you play that guitar left-handed and right-handed?
No. Just left-handed. I mean, just regular, just right, just
standard. That way? Okay. Yeah. Because
I'm
left-handed too.
Right. Some people, well, I think it's probably a camera trick. I'm right-handed. So this is a camera trick thing, I think, with the way my camera is facing. But I've had right or left-handed guitar players that play upside down and backwards, so that the low strings are on the bottom, and their chord voicings are way more interesting that way. And
the way Hendrix that they play like that? Did Hendrix play like that?
No, he flipped it around and restrung it, right? The upside down and backwards guy, I had one guy who used to play with me, a guy named Steve Mitchell, and he was upside down and backwards, and his choices were interesting. He was an interesting guitar player, really, really cool.
So now that you are not this traveling troubadour, this have guitar will travel, because of the past year, how has that affected your life? What's going on?
Well, this is the interesting part about it. So this will be year 31 of being a musician. And for the last couple of years, I've been secretly harboring this desire to take a year off. And then the pandemic showed up and said, okay, fathead, how do you like it? There you go. Take your year off, whether you like it or not. But for the 20 years prior to this, I've always had some kind of side hustle going on, right? So and my wife is, she gives me a hard time. She's like, I mean, starting in 1997, when I was on VH1 every day, I used to tell her, look, this isn't probably going to last for another 18 months and I'm going to have to find something else to do. Like, and I used to give her that speech every year, and she gives me her, she's like, you're going to give me that speech about how this is only going to last another 18 months. And so I've always had some other thing I was doing. And so a few years ago, I started a land clearing company, a grading company called Nomad Land Management. And over the last few years, it's grown to a comparable degree to my music career. And so when all this happened, I just pivoted, and I've been running an excavator or running a forestry mulcher or doing land clearing or driving an 18-wheeler or whatever it is that the business requires. So it hasn't really been weird for me, but I know a lot of musicians that were only doing music that are just sitting here going, oh, what are we going to do? But a lot of people have gone to this virtual idea of, like, you know, like I've been playing the online shows, and a lot of people have found a great success in content creation. And you know, I think it's just a matter of how that's the thing about musicians. They always figure out a way, right? That we're the guys that figure out how to make it work somehow. And I think it's brought out the best in some people, and I think it's probably brought out the worst in others. And it just depends on which side of that fall line you land on, right? Is this just a challenge that needs to be overcome, or is this something that's happened to me? I think it just depends on how you approach it. So I've been enjoying the time at home. I really have.
So now it's the end of 2020, the beginning of 2021. For yourself, any personal goals, anything you want to share with us, or leave us a message for people that want to follow in your footsteps when it comes to recovery, or your own personal plans?
I think the recovery thing. I know for me, I knew when it was out of control. And it took me a long time from the time that I knew it was out of control till I did something about it. Was about 10 years, right? I tried all the different modes of, well, maybe I can wear it like a cape. You know, maybe I can just like strap this identity on, and obviously that's just error thinking. The sooner you can approach recovery, the better. My experience has been that there's no, you know, you don't have to, you know, there's an old saying is that rock bottom is when you quit digging. You know, bottom can be right now. You just got to put the shovel up and quit digging. It doesn't have to be this smoking crater that you have to climb out of. And I've had this conversation with a lot of people I've helped along the way. Like, look, you know, why do you want to take it all the way to the judicial system? Like, let's get out now, and you can cheat the trap. I mean, you know, this is a chronic issue. I know it's a chronic issue. Why do you want it to be, you know, why do you want the judge to find out too? Right? Like, let's just skip this. Let's skip that part of the story. And you kind of beat the system, you know. And as alcoholics, I've found that the idea of cheating the system somehow connects. You know what I mean? Like, if I can talk to somebody, like, if you really want to cheat, you really want to just stick it to the man, is that you don't have to have, you know, chronic liver failure and have to be resuscitated in an ER. Let's get out now. So that's what I would say. I would say if you're listening to this and you've been, you know, if you've had those internal conversations where you know this is a problem, well, you want to beat this whole system. You want to win the game without having to go all the way to the pile of rubble and walk back. Just get off on the next exit, and whatever that looks like is a coach, a sobriety coach, rehab if that works for you. There are a lot of harm reduction models that are out there. This idea that there is only one way to good, long-lasting recovery is I think that myth has been exploded. The data shows that probably 52% of people that recover are capable of doing it on their own by standing up and stopping these behaviors. Now, like me, if you find out that despite my best efforts, I could not stop, and it required assistance from a treatment center like Talbot in Atlanta, or the Meadows is another great group. For me, it required a 90, almost 120-day intervention where I went to residential treatment and learned how to re-enter my life. And for a lot of people, that's the answer, but it's not the only answer. There's a lot of ways to do this. But the big tragedy would be to do nothing, to carry on in pathological disease thinking. That's I think the only mistake that you can make in the process of recovery. And like a lot of people, I relapsed. But relapse is part of it too. It's not a failure. It's just something that you have to move on to the next right thing and carry on. But I see the other thing I would say too is that if there's breath, there's hope. I've seen turnarounds from people who had lost their ability to speak the English language, who you would see and be convinced that they had permanent and irreversible brain damage. And I've seen people recover all the way back to their lives as successful surgeons. Amazing feats of recovery. So as long as somebody's still alive, they have the capability to recover.
Two really big messages. First of all, like you said, where there's breath, there's hope. And that's the thing I tell my clients all the time. If you're alive, there's hope. That's it.
There's hope. That's it. I mean, and there is no, and listen, one of the things that's I had to come to terms with is that there are going to be some relationships that I'll never be able to repair. And so at that point, I have to make a living amends and do the best I can moving forward. And acceptance is part of that. You just have to accept those truths.
You're a living example that treatment works, even though I know you've worked hard at it and you've come a long way, and people want to hear that. They want to see it. It's a great thing. I so appreciate you letting us know and sharing what we would call in the rooms your experience, your strength, and your hope.
Yeah, I'd say this too. I speak openly about it, and I always accept opportunities to talk in these settings because the ongoing stigma that occurs, right? I talk about it openly in my shows, and I can feel the crowd pull back, and I always just reassure them, like, look, it's not contagious. Trust me here. Everybody pulls back on this idea, and that's one of the things we got to push against. And I may be a little obnoxious with how much I talk about it, but mostly because I'm trying to normalize this idea that we can struggle with emotional and mental health and not be permanently broken, right? In the eyes of our friends and family, because it's not true. It's just not true. And everybody's so terrified of mental health issues that we don't do anything about them, and it keeps people from getting help. And we got to break those walls down.
Because we do recover.
We do.
That's what it's all about, man. So I was refraining from the entire time to ask you to play your most popular song, and on my show, but we've just got about 2 minutes here, and I'd love you to play us out. Would you just? I thank you so much. Happy and healthy New Year to you and your family. Please stay safe and healthy, and do the things you want to do in 2021, man. Thanks for
That's
coming
it.
on the Pushy Broad.
The strands in your eyes, they color them wonderful, stab me, steal my breath. Emeralds from mountains, thrust towards the sky, never revealing their depth. And tell me that we belong together, dress it up with the trappings of love. I'll be Captain Deal. Hang from your lips, stand on the gallows of heartache that ain't from above. And I'll be your crying shoulder. I'll be love suicide. I'll be better when I'm older. I'll be the greatest fan of your life. And I dropped out, burned up on my way back from the dead. Soon did turned on, remember the thing that you said. And I'll be your crying shoulder. I'll be love suicide.